couple of years ago, when I was 25, I shared an apartment with one of my best friends. Sadly, our friendship started fading as she wasn't around much. However, on this particular night, she decided to stay over and went to bed early. Due to my job schedule, I often stayed up late, and my routine usually involved watching YouTube videos and relaxing. On this night, everything seemed pretty normal until something strange happened. My neighbors actually tried to kidnap me. Let me share a bit more about where I lived and who my neighbors were. Our house had 3 bedrooms, and the 2 bedrooms along with the kitchen faced the neighbors, a young couple residing in a smaller mill house. They kept showing up at our door asking for weird stuff. I'm usually cool with helping neighbors, but these requests were kind of odd. For example, they wanted us to fill up an old Mountain Dew bottle with water because theirs had been turned off. They also asked for beer, and one time they literally asked us for just $1. It was getting a bit weird. When we didn't answer, I'd peek through the window to check. It was strange. Sometimes I'd catch them grabbing leftover cigarette butts from the ashtray or squishing their eyes against the door peephole, trying to see if we were home. So I'm sitting on the couch watching YouTube when I hear a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes because I knew exactly who was knocking. It was 11 p.m., and when I checked through the little door window, there he was, the boyfriend on my porch. Normally I'd just ignore it and go on with my night, but this time, he looked kind of troubled, so I decided to open the door and see what was up. Hey, I just wanted to ask if you could do me a favor. I've got a ring here in my pocket for my girlfriend, and I need someone to record the moment. Can you follow me to my backyard and film it for me? He nervously asked. It was unexpected. I was pretty confused, but really wanted to find out what was happening. I congratulated him and told him I'd join in a moment. I just needed to put on my shoes. Once I closed and locked the door, I rushed to the back room with a view of their backyard, peeking through the blinds. I expected to see some decorations or a setup, but it was totally dark. No signs of anything. It felt odd, so without wasting time, I woke up my roommate to share the whole story with her. No way, she told me, and we both walked back to the door. After the boyfriend started banging on it, I peeked through the little door window again. It was pretty dark outside, and I couldn't see much. Then I saw him move his eye away from the peephole. It gave me a chill, and I quickly turned around, pressing my back against the door. My roommate hurried back to the door from her room, grabbing 2 wire hangers like they were shields. We both clung to the hangers and sat against the door until he finally left. Someone had added me as a friend from an account called "Why Didn't You Enter the Basement?" It was Chester. I blocked the account immediately. A few minutes later, another request came in, this time from an account named "Why'd You Block Me?" I blocked that one too, but then another appeared. "I know where you live." A moment later, another request. "I'm right outside your house." Then I heard a window shatter downstairs. I called the cops and explained what was happening. The operator told me to find a safe place to hide, so I hung up and locked myself in a closet. As I sat there, I heard footsteps moving from downstairs to upstairs. Peeking through a crack in the closet door, I saw Chester at the end of the hallway. He didn't seem to notice me at first, but then he turned his head, looking right at the closet. I didn't close the door completely, so I moved deeper into the shadows. Chester walked over and opened the closet door. I was hiding behind a large container, and as he fumbled to find the light switch, he eventually gave up and went back downstairs. Seconds later, the police knocked on the door. I opened it immediately and told them what had happened, but by the time they arrived, Chester was gone. They found a broken window in my basement, which is how he had escaped. The next day at school, I reported Chester to the principal. The creepiest part? The principal told me that no student named Chester had ever been enrolled at our school. There were no records of him whatsoever. They checked the security cameras and found that he had snuck in through a back entrance and blended in with the students. I never saw him again, and I never heard back from the police. To this day, I still wonder what Chester's intentions were and why he wanted me to go into the basement. Looking back, he was probably the most dangerous person I've ever encountered. When I was 15, in my sophomore year of high school, lunch periods were randomly assigned. That year, I only had my friends Liam and Mike in my lunch period. A few months into the school year, a new kid joined us in first period astronomy. Our teacher, who loved to joke around, made him introduce himself to the class. His name was Craig. The teacher teased Craig for a bit before telling him to take a seat. I was in the back row, and the only available desk was next to me. Craig sat down, and since class hadn't started yet, everyone was still chatting. As he settled in, Craig looked around the room, then our eyes met. He nodded and said, "What's up?" I replied, "Hey man, what's up?" He introduced himself, so I told him my name. Craig was a white kid with patchy facial hair that looked like it hadn't fully grown in. He wasn't unattractive, but he was just average looking. He tried to make small talk, and I was friendly, understanding how tough the first day at a new school can be. I was probably the first person he officially met there. During the period, we had to pair up for an assignment, and Craig asked to work with me. I agreed, since I didn't have any close friends in that class anyway. We used laptops for the assignment, and it quickly became apparent that Craig's sense of humor was not to my taste. He joked excessively, acting as if we were close friends, but his jokes were offbeat, and his laugh was cringeworthy. He swore frequently and made constant dirty jokes. I'm not easily offended, but his behavior was overwhelming. At the end of the period, we exchanged numbers for the project, and then I moved on to my next class. When lunch arrived, Mike wasn't at school that day, so it was just Liam and me at our circular lunch table. Suddenly, Liam's gaze shifted to someone behind me. I turned to see Craig pulling up a chair next to me. He patted my shoulder and said, "What's up, buddy?" I felt a pang of dread. It meant Craig would be joining us for lunch every day. I tried to stay positive, hoping he might not be that bad. Liam initially tried to be friendly, but Craig's odd behavior soon became apparent. Liam noticed something was off and gave me knowing glances when Craig wasn't looking. That lunch period confirmed that something was wrong with Craig. I'm not judging anyone for being antisocial, but Craig seemed to have a dark side. His comments went beyond just being antisocial. They were unsettling. After school, since it was a Friday, I walked home and texted my friends about our plans later. On my walk, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Craig. He said, "Turn around." I did, and saw Craig running toward me, waving. I muttered, "Oh God," under my breath. When he caught up, he asked how far I lived from school. I said about a 10-minute walk, and he mentioned he lived the same distance. He offered to walk with me, and suggested we finish the assignment over beers. I told him I was busy with friends. He then asked what we'd be doing, trying to invite himself. I said we'd be hanging out at Liam's house, and he asked if he could join. I made up an excuse about Liam's mom not allowing strangers in, and it seemed to work. Craig kept walking with me, and I began to wonder if he was following me home. He did follow me. When I reached my house, I told him, "All right, see you later," and gave him a fist bump. He said goodbye and continued down the street. I noticed him glance back, so I looked away. I texted my group chat about how strange Craig was, and Liam agreed. We made plans to hang out at Liam's house later, but not until around 9 o'clock. A couple of hours later, Craig sent me a disturbing text. "Yo, what's going on in front of your house? Why is there a cop car?" I went outside to check, but there were no cop cars, just Craig standing in our driveway. He laughed and said, "I got you." He then asked why I was going to Liam's house later. I said, "Yeah, in a bit," and asked why he was acting so strange. He didn't laugh. I could see he was offended. I told him I had to go inside and shut the door. Craig texted me, "Bro, WTF?" I was speechless. I had just met this kid that day, spent 40 minutes with him, and now he was obsessing over me and stalking me. He had tricked me into coming outside to see if I was home. I texted back, "You're freaking me out, bro." That was a mistake. Craig sent me a long message saying he thought I was different from others, but I was just like everyone else. I shared the message with my friends, and they were both shocked and amused. I emailed my teacher to explain the situation and ask if I could do the assignment on my own. I left my house and walked to Liam's, needing to get out. While I was there, Craig tried calling me, but I ignored it. I knew Monday would be an awkward day in class. When I got home later that night, around 11 or 12, my parents and sister were out. My parents were probably with friends, and my sister might have been with her boyfriend. Nothing unusual. I locked the door behind me and went to my room. I started watching YouTube videos when I heard the back doorbell ring. Yes, our house has a back doorbell with a different tone than the front one. I went downstairs, expecting it to be my sister, but the backyard lights were off, and no one was visible through the glass. I opened the main door, leaving the screen door locked, and called out, but I heard the sound of someone's shoe scraping the concrete patio just to the left of the door. I shut the door again, locked it, and went back upstairs to call my dad, who didn't answer. Just then, my phone rang. It was Craig. I didn't pick up. He then texted, "Come outside." I replied, "I'm calling the police." To my surprise, he texted back, Okay, I'm leaving." It was him hiding in the yard, waiting for me to come out. I took a screenshot of the text and sent it to my family, friends, and the school. The school contacted his parents, who revealed that this was a common issue with Craig. He had been causing problems at every school he attended. I can only imagine the terrible things he did to others who didn't want to be his friend. Craig didn't show up to class on Monday, or ever again. I suspect he transferred schools once more. I was a senior when this happened. By then, senioritis had fully set in, and it was football season. Our high school was big on football because our team was actually good, and there was nothing else to do in our small, rural town. One day at school, we were in a silly, elective class. My friend JJ was in the class with me, so we were always goofing around. It was a Friday, and we had plans to attend the football game later. JJ, being the smooth talker he is, turned his chair around to face Kayla and Ashley and invited them to the game. We knew them well, so it wasn't weird for him to ask. They seemed up for it, so JJ dropped me off at home after school. About 4 hours later, he picked me up, and we went to get Kayla and Ashley before heading to the school's back parking lot by the woods. We had some Four Locos with us, making sure nobody was watching as we poured them into water bottles to bring to the bleachers. We secured good seats at the top row of the bleachers. Since the game started late, it was dark by the third quarter and pitch black by the fourth. Our team was losing badly, and many kids were leaving early. We decided to stay and hang out on the field after the game. When it ended, the field and bleachers were quiet. The crowd was dispersing. The team had retreated to the locker room in embarrassment, and the visiting team was heading to their buses. Within 10 minutes, we were among the few left in the bleachers, with just a couple of other people around and a few on the field. We were quite drunk by then, and the team's defeat wasn't affecting our fun. When the field lights went out, it was almost completely dark, illuminated only by moonlight. We went to lie down on the field. JJ ran to his car to get more alcohol. It was probably around 10 o'clock by now. JJ suggested going into the woods next to the football field. The girls were scared, which made the idea more appealing. When they refused to budge, JJ and I ran towards the woods, knowing they would follow us. We crawled under a small gap in the fence that kids used to get into the woods and walked down the hill. The girls were hesitant, but followed. We decided to hide to scare them. As soon as they heard us running, they panicked and tried to catch up, but we lost them and hid behind some trees. We laughed for a bit, then JJ nudged me and pointed. In the dark, we could barely make out a towering black figure, maybe 15 feet away, standing between two trees. It was terrifying. Then the figure spoke in a woman's voice, saying, "You kids shouldn't be in here." We stood frozen in silence as the figure seemed to grow larger and closer, though we didn't see any legs moving. There were no footsteps. JJ and I turned and ran, calling for the girls until we found them. We told them to head to the car quickly, and we explained that there was a 7-foot-tall woman in the woods. JJ said if I hadn't seen it too, he'd have thought he'd seen a ghost. The girls were freaked out and wanted us to say we were joking, but we weren't. We watched from the car to see if anyone came out of the woods, but no one did. We wondered why an older woman would be in there at night alone, especially since it wasn't a nature trail, but a fenced-off wooded area. Our school didn't have security back then, so it wasn't too surprising. The 4 of us went to JJ's house afterward, and I'll leave the rest of that night to your imagination. Fast forward to the summer, when I was working at the school as a custodian. I returned every summer for a raise. There were about 4 of us working in the building, 2 older custodians, another 18-year-old, and me. While mowing the grass in the school's center courtyard, I spotted someone at an upstairs window. It was an older woman, around 65, with short curly hair. Her face was blurred behind the window's glare. I stopped mowing, looked at her, and waved, but she didn't move or wave back. I rushed inside to find my boss and asked him about the woman upstairs. He followed me to the math hallway, where I had seen her, but all the classroom doors were closed and the lights were off. The classroom she was supposed to be in was empty. My boss told me there was no one else in the building and suggested I drink some coffee. He went back downstairs, and I followed. I was genuinely spooked. After finishing mowing, I started mopping the upstairs hallways and classrooms. In the math hallway, I opened all the doors and turned on the lights. With my radio playing music, I distinctly heard a woman's voice say, "Young man?" I couldn't tell which classroom it came from, so I turned off the music and checked every room, hoping to find someone. All the classrooms were empty. I even checked behind the desks. My arms were tingling, and I felt a fight or flight response kick in. I rushed downstairs and told my boss that I heard a voice and saw someone up there. He came up with me again, but we found no one. He told me to go home, take the day off, and get some rest. He thought I was imagining things. I connected the 2 incidents and wondered if they were related. What if the figure JJ and I saw in the woods and the voice I heard in the classroom were somehow connected? When I returned to work, I told my boss I didn't want to work in the math hallway because I was scared. For the rest of the summer, I avoided that hallway altogether. Since then, I've firmly believed that my old high school is haunted by the spirit of an older woman. I have no other explanation for these experiences.